Then hello everyone to today's online seminar on interval methods in control engineering. And it's my pleasure to welcome today Quentin Brateau from ENSTA Bretagne in Brest. And Quentin received a double degree in mobile robotics from ENSTA Bretagne and a master in dynamical systems and signals from Polytech Angers, both in France in 2021. And since then, he's a PhD candidate at ENSTA Bretagne in the LabStack laboratory, and he's working on control of torpedo-like AUVs. And yes, at the moment, he will present his work on union of adjacent attractors. And Quentin, the floor is yours.
So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Andres, for the introduction. So today I'm going to speak about union of adjacent contractors. So first, a little bit of context. This work is a part of my PhD at ENSTA Bretagne, under the supervision of Luc Jolin and Fabrice Lebars, and it's under a funding from the AID, which is the Agence Innovation Défense, and that's the French Ministry of Army. So the goal of my PhD is to take the control of a torpedo-like AUV, like you can see on the figure 1, which is the Riptide micro UUV. And the goal is to control this kind of robot in a constrained environment, such as a pool or a harbor. And the goal of this control laws, the control laws has to give maximal reactivity and maneuverability for such a robot in this constrained environment. So the robot has some sensors. For the proprioceptive sensors, there is only one IMU, which is an inertial unit able to sense angular speed, or angular velocity, and linear accelerations. And for exteroceptive sensors, there is a pressure sensor to measure the depth of the robot, and an echo sounder, which is visible under the head of the robot here with the gray ceramic. So that's a one-dimensional acoustic pinger, which is able to sense distance between the robot and the obstacles underwater. So in my thesis, I have to localize the robot inside the constrained environment. So for instance, if we start from an unknown localization for the robot, and if we can add the constraints, so the fact that the robot is inside the pool, for instance, so I can contract the set of possible position for the robot, which is initially unknown, to the set of position inside the pool, if the pool walls are represented here by black segments. And so the robot has to be inside the pool. So that's the first constraint of my problem. And then if I perform a measurement using the echo sounder here, which is able to sense wall distance when I control the robot with a wall not equal to 0, but for instance equal to p/2 here, I am able to sense the distance with the right wall, and I am then able to contract the set of possible positions for the robot, because I've done these measurements on the right side of using the echo sounder. But here, on the top left part of the paving, we could remark that there is an uncertain area, which is not something which is not possible. We could not imagine that the robot is on this area, and the measurement with if the robot is in this uncertain area, the measurement will cross this top right corner, and that's not a possible position for the robot. So there is a problem here. Why is this uncertain area on this paving? So I'm going to speak first about geometric contractors. So geometric contractors are contractors based on geometrical constraints, and they are very useful in localization because we are able, using the one-dimensional pingers, just like before, we are able to localize our robot using this geometric contractor. So for instance, there is the CTC cross, which is a contractor able to contract boxes around the cross constraint. So if there is a robot on the red dot, and there is a measurement segment which is here represented in black, and if there is an obstacle segment in black here, the set of all of the possible position for the red dot, such as the two segments will will cross each other is the pink set, and the set of possible position for the red dots, such as the two segments will not cross, is the blue set. So that's the separator on the cross constraint or the contractors on the cross constraint. So that's an example of geometric contractor. There is also another example I could give you. That's the CTC visible, so the contractors on the visible constraint. So here we could characterize the set of all visible points from the plane in pink from the observation point in black relative to the obstacle segment in black here. And so the opposite of this constraint is the set of invisible points from this observation point in black relative to the black segment here, which is represented on the paving by the blue area. So that's all for the CTC cross and CTC visible, which are two examples of geometric contractors they could use to solve a localization problem. And we have here contractors which are defined on segments, on the obstacle segments in black, but we want often to build extensions of these contractors on polygons. So I'm going to show you how we could extend this contractor segment on polygons. So if we take back the subvisible, the definition of the subvisible, we would like we know, I'm going to show you how to build a subvisible on the segment E1, and then I'm going to show you how to build it on the part of polygon E1 plus E2. So if you want to build the visible on this segment E1, we just use these construction lines here, and we define the set of all the positions which are on the left part of this segment A. We will define also all the points which are on the left part of this segment B, and the same for this segment C. And we could just, by reuniting, intersecting all these sets, we could define the set A1, which is the set of not visible points from this observation point P relative to the segment E1. So that's for the first segment E1, and we could do the same for the segment E2. So we use these new construction lines, and we could define the set of all points which are on the left part of this segment D, the same for the segment E, and the same for the segment F, and we will characterize the set of all points which are not visible from the observation point P relative to the segment E2, which is here represented by the area A2. So that's all for the subvisible on each segment. And then we want to characterize the masked area. So the masked area is here the area A, which is equal to the union of A1 and A2. And if we take a boundary approach on this union of sets, we could say that the boundary of A1 is equal to A plus B plus C. We could say also that the boundary of A2 is equal to D plus E plus F. But we could just notice that the boundary of A is not equal to the union of the boundary of A1 plus the boundary of A2, because the boundary of A1 plus the boundary of A2 is equal to A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F. And to get the real boundary of A, we have to take into account the fact that C and D is something about the opposite one of each other. So we have to take into account that D is something like minus C. And with this simplification, we could just remove the C and D, and we just get back the real boundary of A, which is equal to A plus B plus C plus F. So with this boundary approach, we could see that there is a problem on this two constraints C and D. And when we perform a paving on the union of the two paving of the subvisible for E1 and for E2, we get this paving with this uncertain area in yellow here, which is nonsense, which is not possible with a normal classical set theory, in fact. So there is a two solution I could provide you for union of adjacent contractors with geometrical contractors. That's the fact to build contractors on the union and not to take the union of contractors. So in this case, we don't build contractors on A plus B plus E for the first segment, and then D plus E plus F for the second segment. And then when we perform union, we get this in certain area. So the solution is to build contractors on the union directly. So to build contractors on A plus B plus E plus F, for instance. Or we have to find a way to take into account the fact that C and D are everything which is in C plus everything which is in D is in R2. So that's the fact that when we take a box which is crossing the right part and the left part of this yellow line, this box should be characterized as inside the blue part directly. And that's for this constraint, I don't have any solution for now, but it could be an open discussion about that. So that's all for geometric contractors. But when we speak about union of contractors, there is also possible some things to do to solve the generic union of contractors which are adjacent. So if we take a set A, which is here semi-plane, half plane here, if we take this disk B, which is defining by this equation, and we could also define set C, which is the same disk but just shifted on the x-axis, we could define some sets from this set. So there is, for instance, A inter B and not A inter C. And we want to characterize the set Z, which is equal to A inter B union not A inter C. So when we perform a paving of this expression, of this set Z, we get this paving visible here. And there is a fake boundary between the set A inter B and the set not A inter C, which is this boundary. And this boundary should not appear because these two sets are adjacent. And this boundary is a fake boundary, in fact. So we would see how it is possible to remove this boundary. So if we get the Carnot map of the expression of Z, so here there is on the first line there is not A, on the second line there is A, and there is for each column not B and not C, not B and C, B and C, and B and not C, for instance, for the last column. And then in pink on the Carnot map, I have represented the expression of Z. And there is the paving of Z we want to get as the final result of our paving. So if we plot the boundary of Z, we could see that there is these yellow lines, which are corresponding to these yellow boxes on the paving. So if we try to use the disjunctive normal form, such as before, to build this paving, we could get A and B, which is corresponding to A inter B on the paving. And that's on the Carnot map corresponding to this pink box between A and B and C and not E. So that's this pink part, this pink box for not A and C. There is this paving corresponding to this expression, and that's corresponding to, in the Carnot map, to this pink box. And we get the disjunctive normal form defining our Z set. So the fact is that when we are using this disjunctive normal form to describe our set, there is also these blue lines which are added to the boundary of our set. And this blue line is exactly corresponding to this fake boundary between the two sets we have on the paving. So to avoid this fake boundary to appear on the paving, we have a way to do that is to use a boundary preserving form. So we start back from the disjunctive normal form, and we could add a set which is B and C, which is paved here. We could add this set to the disjunctive normal form to get this Carnot map with this new blue box, and we get the final paving, which is represented here without the fake boundary. So by adding something inside the expression of the set we want to characterize, we are able to perform a paving without any fake boundaries. So that's a way to avoid this fake boundary to appear in the more general case without any not orthogonal, but geometric contractors. Okay, but this general solution is not the solution for every set, because if you want to characterize, for instance, this set which is equal to A union B, if we have the set A which is a ring and the set B which is also a ring, when we want to perform the union of these two sets, we get this fake boundary between the two sets, because these two sets have an adjacent side. There is a common boundary between the two sets, and this common boundary here is exactly corresponding to the point which is at the center of the Carnot map here. So there is no possible there is not the possibility to add a set inside the expression for the paving to add this central point and to avoid this fake boundary to appear. So that's not a general solution for the general case. That's why I have another way to solve this problem, is to build to use a boundary approach and to build a contractor on the boundary, and then we could use a predicate to color the inside and the outside part of this paving, and so that's what I am going to show you. So if you have the set Z we want to characterize here, there is the possibility to build a contractor on the boundary. So for instance, here there is the boundary of B inter A, which is paved on the paving. And that's here is the corresponding boundary inside the Carnot map, which is in blue. So on the second line here, there is the set A, and the boundary of B is this line and this line. We could do the same for the boundary of C inter node A. So node A is the first line here, and the boundary of C is this line and this line on the Carnot map. So we have, when we perform the intersection, we have only the two blue segments on the Carnot map which are appearing. We could do the same for the boundary of A inter B and node C. So the boundary of A is this line and this line. And when we perform the intersection with B and node C, we get only the last column part of this boundary. So that's corresponding to the blue lines inside the Carnot map. And finally, we could also define on the paving the boundary of A inter node B and C. So the boundary of A is the first line, the boundary of the first line. When we could just intersect it with node B and C, which is the second column, and we get the blue boundary, which is defining the paving, which is defined on the paving. And when we perform the union of all this boundary I have defined just before, we get the boundary of Z, which is the boundary of the set we want to characterize, and this paving is corresponding to the union inside the Carnot map of the yellow lines. So we have a definition of the boundary of our set inside the Carnot map, which is corresponding to this paving. And finally, there is the possibility to use a predicate to just color to just characterize the set of boxes which are inside the set and outside the set. So the set of boxes which are in pink here and in blue to characterize the outside of our set Z. So to use that, we just use a predicate, and we color a predicate on one box. And when we just color one box of in blue or in pink, every connected subset of boxes which are connected to this box are of the same color because they are not crossing a boundary. So that's very efficient to build this kind of contractor and color method. So to conclude, there is a problem with the union of contractors, and this problem is on adjacent contractors on which there is fake boundaries when we want to create a paving of adjacent contractors. For geometric contractors, there is very often the possibility to define contractors on the union instead of reuniting the contractors, which are defined for each segment, for instance. Or we need also to find a way to add the constraint of the fact that when you have a set A and we have the union with not A, the resulting set is the whole R2, for instance, on these examples. But for the general union, there is two ways to solve this kind of problems. There is the fact we could use the boundary preserving form, for instance, if that's possible to split our problem onto another set, like I've show you on the Carnot map. Or there is also the possibility to use a boundary approach and a predicate to build the boundary of our set and to color it to characterize the inner part and the outer part of the paving. So thank you for your attention. If you have any question, it would be my great pleasure to answer them.
Okay, many thanks for your presentation. And yes, I'm pretty sure that there will be some question. Is there anyone from the audience who wants to start? Okay, let me start with the first question. Okay. One thing that I like very much is the idea that you illustrated those fake boundaries with the help of the Carnot diagrams, the Carnot maps. Could you go back to the slide 10, please?
Yep.
Where you have this first example. Yes, here. At the moment, you assumed that those disks, B and C, that they have really thin boundary, a really clear inside and outside of the disk. What would happen in this scenario if you would treat some thick sets? If, for example, the variable 2 that you have, -2 square, becomes to an interval itself, and yes, that you have an uncertain boundary separating the interior and the outer area.
I know what you are meaning. What do you mean? Maybe when you use this kind of thing, that's something about SIG set. So that set with a SIG boundary. So here, that's not only just thin boxes, but that's also a set of so this boundary could be just larger, and maybe I could just use the same thing, the same method with the same boundary approach on the Carnot map, but the boundary has also two boundaries maybe. So this Carnot map technique could maybe be used, but I don't know if it's direct. Yeah, maybe we could just build a contractor on the boundary of our set, but this there is maybe an arithmetic on the SIG set, which was proposed by Luc Jolin and Benoît Desrochers, I think, which could be used on the Carnot map. So
yes, because I think the interesting thing would then be you wouldn't have, let's say, something like this binary logic that you're currently using, like 0 and 1 inside or outside, but you need something in between, maybe a third value logic in this case.
Yeah, maybe.
This could be very interesting also, since yes, in the very first example we have shown. Yes, you have a sensor position, you have an obstacle, and you want to detect the region behind. Then it would, for example, relate to, I do not know perfectly the position of the sensor, or that you do not perfectly know the edges, and that the edges, for example, of this black line that you had shown at the beginning become uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something which could be very useful and very common to don't know exactly the position of the sensor. So this set will not be a thin set, but a SIG set with SIG borders. But I've not already tried these things. But maybe it could be a very a good idea to try this application on the SIG set.
Okay, do we have further questions in the audience? If not, I have a second question. Did you already try to implement this contractor directly Yes, on your drone, on the Riptide robot?
No, I only perform some offline computations, but I don't have online computation of interval inside the robot for now, because that's maybe I'm not already using it to localize the robot inside the pool for now. But it could be something which could be interesting in the future. But something which is not as easy as with the probabilistic methods is the fact that when we perform a state estimation of the robot inside the pool using interval methods, we get very often a big paving for the estimation of the state of the robot, and we don't have the more probable the point with the the best probability from where is the robot inside the pool, and this point is very useful to perform control online on the robot. So that's something which could be used just afterward. There's a set methods are very useful afterward to know the set of possible position for the robot and the set of the set of the position in the pool. For instance, the robot just scan with his sensors.
Yes, I fully agree with you. For example, when you want to detect, for example, some coverage measures, when you want to figure out which portion of the pool has been scanned and which not, that's definitely clear. Okay,
Yes.
Luc, you have raised your hand. Do you have a comment?
Yeah. Yes. I have maybe a small question. So I would like to know. Normally I'm supposed to know, but I don't know everything. I would like to know what is fully automatic. I mean, you give an expression, such as, for instance, in the slide you show, there is up. No, you change the slide. Yes, in this slide up. No.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you change this. I don't know why. Yes. Stop. Okay. Slide number 10, for instance. Here you show an expression with an expression with respect to A and B.
Yes.
And I would like to know if I give any expression like this, you have an automatic way to build the cartomap and to extract the boundary, or you have to do it by hand?
If I use this expression, there is the possibility using the cartomap to build the paving of Z. Not automatically, because on the next slide I just showed that okay, on the next slide I just showed that we have to add this set to have the boundary preserving form, but that's something I just think about, and I've just add this set because I want to preserve the boundary, but that there is no automatic way to compute this set to add on the expression for this part. And for the second method with the boundary preserving form, that's also something we have to think about. And just here, when I build all the boundary contractors, I build it by hand without taking the fake boundary by hand. And so that's everything has to be done by hand, and there is no automatical way for now to build this boundary contractor, I think. But maybe there is a possibility to improve that and to automatically build contractors on the boundary, for instance.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But I think that's a very nice question to investigate further, because at the moment when you have those three constraints, it's not so difficult to play around and add things that are not, I think, yes, from an introductory lecture to computer science, you would say the first representation was more or less a min-term representation of this logical expression. And yes, to add something that doesn't change the result is not so difficult if you only have those three different constraints. But it would be very interesting, for example, if you have 10 different constraints for which you want to find the union then afterwards. And this would really be nice.
But maybe to characterize the common boundary between the two sets A A and B and not A and C here. So that's the fake boundary, exactly the fake boundary here. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if we want to characterize the common boundary between the two sets, we could just do a contractor on the union of these two sets, and the common boundary will belong to the two sets. So when we perform a paving on the intersection of these two sets, there is only this fake boundary which is appearing. So maybe by using just after boundary algebra, or maybe something like that, we could just subtract this fake boundary from the global boundary of our set Z, and we could just compute it automatically.
Yeah. Okay. Further questions?
Yes, maybe I have another question. On your slide number 14, please.
Yes.
Up,
14.
yes, with the with the two disk.
Okay, so that's before 12.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, this
okay.
one. Here you have two sets.
Yes.
But I think if you replace this, normally, if you want to do it well, you should consider that you have three sets. No? Because here you have two sets I call A and B. Okay, you have the union.
Yes.
But the problem is that it's not a generic situation, because A and B have a common boundary, which is not the case. You should assume that the atoms, the basic atom, do not have a boundary in common to be generic. So I would think that if you have three sets, let's say the blue and the middle ring and the small ring, so you could consider three sets, that you can find an expression so that you do not have the problem you are of this fake boundary between the two rings. No?
I don't see how can I just split my problem into to introduce another set, but in fact this fake boundary is here corresponding to the middle point here between A and B, A and not B, and not A and B. So that's exactly this point, and there is in fact no possibility to add a set inside the Carnot map which is enclosing this point.
Yes, because your two sets A and B are two rings, but you could also start with three other sets, let's say X, Y, and Z. That could be three disks.
Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's so
the atoms. So the atoms that are the basic sets do not share any common boundary.
Yes, okay. I see. Okay, if we define the set of the three disks, so the first disk inside and the two disks around. Yeah, okay. That was just an example to give insight about the generic union of generic contractors, but maybe this example could be just a breakdown into some other things. And that's how I just plot this expected A union B. That's just because to plot this paving, I just use set inversion. And I just said that for the A part, the A set, the ring radius is inside the 1, 2, for instance, and the B ring, the radius of the B ring is inside 2, 3. So there is a common boundary which is 2 between 1, 2, and 2, 3. And so that's why I have this fake boundary here. So there is also a possibility to try to plot this resulting set without any fake boundaries using other methods.
Okay.
Okay, then let's see. Is there anyone else who is curious to know anything additionally? If not, then again, many thanks, Quentin, for your interesting presentation, for your patience also to answer all the questions. And yeah, for me, the remaining job is to wish you all a nice Friday afternoon. Have a nice weekend, and we'll meet each other again on Friday in 2 weeks, where we'll have the next presentation of Lorenz Gillner from the University of Applied Sciences in Wismar.
Thank you, Andreas.
Okay, thank you.